Welcome. We are so happy to have you here today to join us for Mind Games, a conversation about mental health in sports and business. My name is Jessica Dorney, and I'm the Assistant Director of Outreach and Engagement for the College of Business. The College of Business and the College of Business Alumni Chapter is proud to partner with our friends at NESTRE Health and Performance to shed some light on a topic that impacts each of us, particularly in the virtual world that we find ourselves in today. Whether you're going to work on the field or in the office, we can all improve our performance by developing our mental strength. That strength is critical to success in athletics, business, and in our lives. It's homecoming week here at UCF, and I'd like to introduce you to our moderators, Dr. Tommy Shavers, founder and CEO of NESTRE Health and Performance, as well as the former UCF defensive player and captain. We also have Kyle Israel, partner and director of business development, as well as a former UCF quarterback. Laura Rivero is a College of Business student and also a team member with NESTRE, and she'll be helping out with the Q&A. And with that, I'll hand it over to the NESTRE team.
Thank you, Jessica, for those introductions. We're super excited to be a part of this panel discussion today and to moderate this panel. And obviously, as you can see, we have a great group of panelists that we're looking forward to engaging with and adding a lot of value to you all and our audience today. Since I've been introduced, I will say that in my time at UCF, obviously being a quarterback for our football team was an incredible experience, but also serving as the president of the Student Athlete Advisory Council and currently serving as a member of the UCF Alumni Board is something that I truly cherish, and we're very happy to partner today with the UCF College of Business for this event. What I'd like to do before we get to the panel questions and the panel discussion is just cover a few housekeeping topics. Throughout the panel discussion in the first 45 or 50 minutes, there will be an opportunity to ask questions and answers and get answers at the end of the program. And so if you have questions throughout that you'd like to ask the panelists, go ahead and submit those questions in the Q&A box at the bottom, and Laura, my co-facilitator, will facilitate those and ask the questions as we move forward into that round. I want to take the opportunity to give a more formal introduction to the panel that we have here today. And I'm going to start out with Ritta Kelly, and Ritta Kelly is a model, investor, entrepreneur, activist, culture enthusiast, and former collegiate athlete. She's currently based out in New York City, and when not on set for a photo shoot, this aspiring polyglot spends most of her time advocating for causes such as social justice and improvement towards advancing mental health. She corresponds with contacts worldwide to grow her network of like-minded advocates in hopes of creating a strong environment behind her ideals. She's also the founder of IABAB, a new brand with a mission of promoting unconditional self-love within the Black diaspora worldwide. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Rita, for being here with us today. We also have Julius Thomas. Julius is a former college football and basketball player at Portland State. He was a fourth-round selection at tight end for the Denver Broncos in 2011. He was also selected to the NFL Pro Bowl twice in 2013 and 14 and played in Super Bowl 48. His playing career included time with the Jacksonville Jaguars and Miami Dolphins, Denver Broncos, and he retired from the game in 2018 to pursue a doctorate in psychology with the goal of studying CTE and mental wellness for professional athletes. And he will provide a very unique lens at both sides of those arenas today. Hue Jackson. Hue Jackson has 30 years of coaching experience, including the past 17 in the NFL. He has spent more than 10 seasons coaching in the AFC North, during which time he helped his team advance to the postseason 7 different times. He was head coach of the Cleveland Browns and Oakland Raiders, and he also served as offensive coordinator in Washington, Atlanta, Oakland, and Cincinnati. Passionate about preventing human trafficking and making a difference in the lives of those affected by it, Hugh and his wife, Michelle Jackson, embarked on the journey to fight all forms of human trafficking. They established the Hue Jackson Foundation and are committed to walk this journey until human trafficking is abolished. Spencer Paysinger. Spencer Paysinger, a Los Angeles native, enrolled at Beverly Hills High School in 2002, where he played a variety of sports, but excelled at football, leading his team to an undefeated regular season in his senior year. After graduating, he accepted an athletic scholarship to the University of Oregon, and his personal story is the inspiration for the CW drama All-American. He serves on the board of the KIPP Public Schools Black and Latino Leadership Committee with the goal of creating programs for KIPP's South Central youth. Spencer recently accepted a board position with Lyft's City Work Council, which dedicates $50 million a year to support locally driven initiatives. And Spencer created Afterball LLC, an investment fund fully backed by NFL athletes with a focus on early stage startups in his neighborhood of View Park, California. He helped create Hilltop Coffee and Kitchen, a fast casual eatery with allegiance to underserved communities. We also have John Smith. John Smith is a former American athlete who competed in sprint events during his career. He is best known for winning the 400-meter event in the 1971 Pan American Games. He remains the world record holder for the 440-yard dash at 44.5 seconds, which is incredible. After retiring from competition, he became a sprint coach, training Maurice Green and Ado Bolden, amongst others. Described as a taskmaster with the Midas touch, the Nike Global Speed Consultant is considered one of the most accomplished sprint and hurdle coaches, coaching elite athletes to Olympic gold, world championships gold, and world records. He ranks as one of the most dedicated track coaches in the history of the modern Olympic Games. And I wanted to see if and Calvin has been able to get in here on the panel and does not need an introduction, but I will make that. Calvin Johnson, AKA Megatron for football fans and for non-football fans, and rightfully so. He's widely regarded as one of the greatest wide receivers to ever play the game. Calvin retired from the NFL in 2016 after 9 record-breaking seasons with the Detroit Lions. He was a standout college athlete, and he finished his NCAA career as a consensus first-team All-American and was a team captain at Georgia Tech. In 2008, he founded the Calvin Johnson Jr. Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to the education, training, and social development of at-risk youth. And the foundation has since helped thousands of children and families in Michigan, as well as Calvin's home state of Georgia. Upon his retirement, Calvin shifted his attention from the football field to the world of business. As one of Locker Room Consulting's founding partners, Calvin is focused on using his broad range of experience to support his former colleagues as they grow financially, personally, and professionally. So I want to thank all of our panelists for being here today. I know that our audience is super excited about hearing from each and every one of you. Quickly, I'm just going to give you a quick insight to NESTRE and who we are. And so, you know, NESTRE is an acronym for neurostrength, and we focus specifically on mental and cognitive strength training. And really our mission is to take human wellness and performance into a new era and to adequately meet the demands of the future. We ultimately want to make the opportunity to get better available for mass consumption. And currently, we're creating an app platform that will allow users to engage in a digital workout experience for the mind and brain. And as a part of you all attending this webinar today, we'll be sending a thank you email that'll have a link for you all to go on and pre-register to download the app and for a free subscription for the first 90 days. So we'll send that out after. Look for the link in your email, and that's what we'd like to provide to you all today for joining us. And last, but certainly not least, I'd like to introduce my mentor, friend, confidant, and the president and CEO, founder and president and CEO of NESTRE Health and Performance, Dr. Tommy Shavers, who Jessica introduced earlier as well. In his career and as founder and president of Shavers Consulting prior to NESTRE, Dr. Shavers consults with college and professional sports, as well as high-profile, high-performance individuals and organizations in the area specifically of leadership, culture, behavior, and performance. And he serves as the sports and health chair for the Harvard Medical Global Health Catalyst Summit and is a board member for the Society of Neurosports. He conducts NFL rookie symposiums and NCAA mandatory player conduct trainings in sexual assault and domestic violence. He was a 3-year letter winner and a 3-year letter winner in football and a team captain right here at UCF, where he also served as the athletic program's first life skills coordinator. He's the leadership chair of the Institute for Personal Player Development and the creator of the High-R Cognitive Performance Model, High-R Cognitive Performance Cycle, and the NESTRE training model. He's a former college professor and has been a radio show host and TV guest expert, and has published books in the areas of social status, power, and athlete behavior. And with that, I'd like to turn the platform over to Dr. Shavers to do an introduction of himself and give you a little bit more insight about his story and why this topic specifically, mental health in sports and business, is important to us at NESTRE.
Can you hear me? Awesome. Again, thanks, Kyle. Thanks to awesome panelists for being here. We're excited about today. And thank you also to UCF College of Business for having us. This is awesome. We're looking forward to having some great conversations. This is personal for us, especially for me. My story and journey. My football playing career was ended from head injuries. And I personally lived through the experience of mental and cognitive decline for several years, which really became my all-consuming passion, was to how to find ways to help people get better. And essentially that was the seed and the fuel for starting NESTRE. And so as Kyle alluded to earlier, we really are looking to help change the narrative around this ideal of getting better. We believe better should be available for everyone, and that the narrative should be changed, that whether it's pathology or performance, there's still an opportunity to get better. And so we're looking forward to the dialogue today, specifically around mental health as it relates to sports and business. The panelists are outstanding. Looking forward to having the conversation. And without any further ado, I'll go ahead and get us started by asking the first very difficult question. I'm going to start with Calvin. And so this is not so much a question starting off, but first a statement. First of all, congratulations on the Hall of Fame nomination. And so that's outstanding.
Thank you, sir.
And I know you're proud of that. If you could tell us a little bit about just that feeling of being nominated, what it would be like to, be selected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, which we know is coming. We feel that. But what's it like to have that nomination?
Well, thank you, Tommy. Good to see you. As always, man, it's an absolute honor to be able to play this game, to play it with the amazing players I was able to play it with, to play it at a high level. I think just being around such talented athletes just pushed me. And I think it goes for everybody that plays in the NFL. It pushes everybody to be their best. And, it's just a matter of, focusing energy day by day, stacking good days on top of each other. And, that's just how that's the principles I kind of, one of the principles I had to kind of live by, just stack good days and work on top of good days. And, I look back and I'm here today, talking on this panel. It's just like that. And because, when you have nothing, really, I feel like you have nothing to look back and regret because you put your best foot forward each day. I guess that's just the fruit of the labor, and I'm so appreciative to be mentioned and with the capacity of some of the greats that came before.
That's awesome. I remember a story. We were at a conference together, and you told a story that I know it shook me because I didn't know anything about it. But you talked about having a serious injury early in your playing career, and I was shocked because I hadn't heard anything about that at all, and just the impact of that. Can you talk a little bit, share a little bit of that story? And how did it impact your mindset, from a mental perspective, to go on to have the kind of playing career you had?
Yeah, I think it was my rookie year. We were playing in Philadelphia, went up for a ball, came down, had two defenders under me, but they kind of split, and I came right down on the back of my, just on my tailbone area kind of, and I just lost feeling in my legs. I'm laying on the field. And my receiver coach, Sean Jefferson, comes over there and he's like, get up, we gotta get up, we gotta walk off the field. And I'm just like, Coach, I can't feel my legs. And I'm kind of tearing up a little bit because I'm just like, Like, it can't happen like this, you know? And then was it McNabb come over there? Like, a lot of the Eagles players come over, like, come on, kid, get up. But, you know, a couple minutes later, started getting the feeling back, got up, got carted off the field. And it was just a hard time back because I wasn't myself, because I couldn't move. I couldn't move because my back was jacked up. And, you know, just not being able to feel as yourself, knowing what you are, you know, physically, psychologically, it just kind of alters, you know, your well-being, kind of, I guess, kind of what we're going to talk about more here today. And not on top of that, you know, losing, you know, and not having, you know, a lot of success early there in my career in Detroit, that didn't help either, you know. So a lot of those things played on your emotional and psychological health. And I'll let you take it back from there.
Awesome. I'll turn it over to Kyle. I think you're muted, Kyle.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I'd like to ask Julius a question, and then we'll allow Laura to ask Ritta a question. But Julius, really from your experience in the performance world, not just football, but also basketball at Portland State, what would you say is the thing that people understand the least about performing under stress?
Thanks, Kyle. That's a great question. And I think that, you know, I got the experiential understanding of performing under stress, you know, playing the NCAA tournament or playing the Super Bowl. And you can feel that inner anxiety, that type of performance stress. But I think it wasn't until I went back to school to pursue a doctorate that I fully started to appreciate what stress is. Stress is not just that inner arousal that, you know, you can experience before you do something meaningful. It's something a lot about like what Calvin talked about as well. Pain is a stressor. Social pressures are a stressor. So for an athlete, you have to navigate these throughout your career, even leading into the game. Like, it's not just like the stress starts when you're getting ready in the locker room and you strap the helmet off and you take the field as a group of men. Stress is how you manage your day-to-day grind. And I think that it's underappreciated, the level of stress that high performance individuals, whether they be in industry or in sports, they have to overcome on a daily basis. And one thing I really want people to understand is the amount of people watching you increases the amount of stress, because we're just social creatures. And when you know that you're getting ready to play one of the biggest games of your life, and you know that there's maybe 50 to 100 million people watching, these stress levels are something that human beings have not had to face before. So and able to be able to manage that type of stress and to perform at a high level, you really have to be able to be with it and not try and avoid it. And you got to kind of create that mindset of going towards it. And I think that that's what everyone that has done anything at a high level understands, is it doesn't ever feel comfortable. It's a mindset and a resilience to move towards that goal that you want, and then try to live through that and create the best performance you can at that time.
Awesome. Thank you for that incredible answer. And I'll turn it over to Laura to ask Ritta the next question.
All right. So as a model and woman, what do you tell the millions of women who have consumed social media content and the impact it has had on their personal self-image?
I think that social media is one of those things that can both be extremely powerful in a good way and also can completely harm you. I think the biggest thing I tell people is to remember that 90% of people on social media are going to only show the best side of themselves, the best side of their life. It might not even be real, but to remember that everyone on there is a human being. They go through ups, they go through downs. Everybody has sad moments in their lives. Everyone has the happy moments in their lives. People go through stress. And honestly, I feel like you just can't take it too seriously. Even though it's somewhat my job to continuously post on social media, it's in some of my contracts that I have to, but I have to take social media breaks. If I'm worried too much about it, it starts to put that inner stress on me. It ruins my mood. It'll just ruin my whole day. And I just think that people need to make sure they're not taking it so seriously, and not to take people on social media so seriously, because it's honestly a fantasy.
Couldn't agree more.
And also too, for our panelists, if any of you feel you want to jump in on some of the other questions that resonates with you, feel free to do that as well. And so we'll have some virtual dialogue going here that we think would be good. And this next question is for Spencer, but it's also open for the other panelists if you guys want to add something to this. I think there's some value you can add also. So Spencer, so you're a Super Bowl champion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so not many people can even say that. Then you go and now you create a hit, TV show series, CW, Netflix show, the All-American, which I have personally complained to you about, that it was too captivating and addicting, which I think is a good problem to have when you do something well. You've been at some unique places when it comes to the high demand, high performance industries. And from your perspective, what does it take to have success in such high demanding industries while not jeopardizing your personal well-being?
To me, I think it's having a acute sense of self-awareness, just knowing your strengths and weaknesses. I've always thought that was sort of my own superpower of being able to assess myself. I'm talking from being an undrafted guy going across the country to try out for the Giants, to potentially getting a meeting with Warner Brothers at the time when we were thinking about what All-American could be. But it's just always knowing exactly, or at least attempting to know exactly who you are as a person and what you can provide in terms of your service. Going back to my time starting in the NFL, that was the one time I realized that I was better for a team as primarily a special teams player. Now, growing up, wanting to play football, wanting to get to the NFL, it's something that getting to the NFL is synonymous with being a starter in the NFL. But once I had that, once I, got the mic in got the headphone, giving the calls to the defense and whatnot, I realized I was my most stressed in my entire career when I had the helm of the defense. But I was able to be that much better for my team when I sort of gave that power to somebody else and told the team, like, listen, I will be a demon for you on special teams. And that's just realizing who I was as a person, who I was as a football player, and how I could provide the best version of me to a team. So yeah, to me, it's just having an acute sense of self-awareness.
Thank you, Spencer. Hue, I'm going to ask you the next question. I'd like you to talk about the importance really of cultivating manual habits on a team or inside of an organization that really lead to automatic retrieval of goal-oriented performance outcomes, knowing that everybody's looking to perform at a higher level. How important is cultivating those manual habits on a team?
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to say hello to the panel, and Spencer, your dad was a real joy in my life as a young guy playing football at Dorsey High School. So make sure you say hello to him for me.
Oh, will do.
Absolutely. To answer your question, being the head coach at Cleveland, I was able to really try to take it to another level. That's when I really started to understand how important the mental side was for football players. We talk about the physical, but the physical is ran by the mental. And I don't think enough people put a lot of emphasis into it. I was very fortunate to get to know Tommy on a whole different level, Dr. Shavers on a whole different level, who really started to show me how we can help players be the best version of themselves. And when you think of an organization, everybody's trying to do everything they can to get their players to play at a high level week in and week out, not just in the games, but practice that way and be able to do everyday life that way. And how do you do it and do it successfully? And if you don't have the proper resources in place, it doesn't help your players be the best. More than likely, they may even decline. So we started to set up a brain room the best we could. We weren't able to get it totally off the ground, but we had some things in place that then gave us just a chance to give players that resource to where they had another place to not just train their bodies and train, from eating properly, but also train to the mental aspect of what they needed to do. And I think it really helped some guys on our football team.
Awesome, thank you. And all of those really, really critical things. And you can see as we've thought as athletes, we've always thought about training from the neck down. And as we move forward, it's becoming very evident that training from the neck up is critical, and one of the things that we're definitely locked into at NESTRE. I'll direct the next question to John, to Mr. Smith. And wanted to ask you something specific to where you coach and in the sports that you're a part of. In a more individualized sport, specifically in track and field, what are some of the mental challenges athletes face knowing that the outcome of their success relies specifically on their individual performance? And how do you teach athletes to cope with that?
First of all, it's morning time here. So I'm gonna say good afternoon to everyone else and good morning to us on West Coast. This day-to-day practice, I always tell them when you come onto the track, the turnstile, leave your challenges outside the track, because you have total control of what you can do when you are mindful of the task at hand. And I found, go back as an athlete, I started at UCLA, and I was a scrub as a freshman. My first year, I led off the 4x4. My second year, my sophomore, I ran second. My junior year, I ran third, and my senior year, I started anchoring the team. But my growth primarily was finding that sweet spot that I could come to practice and know that I finished something that I started. It had nothing to do with how fast I ran. I had personal things that I had to do in practice. And so even when I lost, I would take a few minutes before I would, finish, before I would disrupt my room. And I would sit down and always say, what did I learn today? And that started building a background of I'm gonna put in my toolbox so that when I saw something, I said, I recognize that. And one thing was, I didn't like to lose. Nobody does. I was embarrassed to lose. It was almost like my father when I sat at the table when I was in high school. My father would say, did you win? I said, no. Okay, boy, you need to get a job. So I went through that whole thing. But I found when I won, my sister said, Bubba, that was my nickname. Bubba won. All he was said, And I knew I got his love then. So when you reinforce people every day as a coach, I reinforce people every day. Yeah, I'm hard on them, but I always say, if you take something away from them, you got to give it back to them at the end of the day, even if you got to make a phone call. Now it's easier because we got cell phones. I love it. I had a conversation yesterday where I was having a conversation with one of my athletes, one of the athletes that I coach, and he was saying, I can't stand being around that guy. I'm not going to be doing this here, coach. You got to get rid of him. And I'm like, hold up, chief. This is my camp, And I had to explain to him that when you come, you can't let people throw roadblocks up at you to take you away from your goal. And part of what you do is you got to operate from a state of forgiveness every day. You got to always have hope, and you have to have gratitude. So, and I explained to him a couple of lessons that I had. I said, I brought somebody in. I brought them into my house, and they turned on me. And I said, and one day I saw them, it's about 9 years later, and I looked up to him, I said, we don't need this. You're doing very well. I said, I'm doing well. I said, we can come together and collaborate on the better good. And when I walked away from that session of forgiveness, all of a sudden I felt better. It was like somebody just lifted a boot off my chest. And when you, as a performer, you constantly have to be able to reinforce, because you learn from your challenges, the ones you succeeded in and the ones you didn't succeed in. And you build your character based on how you handle that, and to be able to manage it. Because when the ultimate performer, and especially I know a lot of guys who play football, you know, that crowd does something different to you. And as a rookie, it overwhelmed me. I got scared. I didn't want to take my clothes off, and I couldn't swallow. But what I did, I had some of my mentors say, use it. And I went, what do you mean? I said, use that energy. All it is energy. So I had to learn how to turn it in and benefit from it. It was almost putting on, well, actually, you know, you put on your suit of armor and you go out there and you do battle. Well, we don't hit no one in track and field, but we do perform. And when you perform, the crowd who paid their hard money to come and watch you win, they don't watch you lose. Somebody in that audience wants you to win. You have to hook on to the energy, because when they're clapping, I always say, especially up at Oregon, Spence, I said, oh, they shouting for me. And I learned to turn all of that in and use it. So I was only the person that I had to overcome was me. And I'd said, I don't lose races, I win places. And so you develop that from and you always have to ride high. You can't let them see you sweating. You know, when if they beat you, you go, hey man, nice job. You can walk away and say, I'm gonna kick your behind later on, but you don't give anybody a chance. Once you got them down, you got them down. Don't have they got to go take the dirt out their face. You don't need to put any more mud in there.
Thank you, John, for that awesome, elaborate answer, and so much awesome context within that answer.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So this question is for the panelists. We have a unique perspective here. We have a coach's perspective and we have a player's perspective. And so at NESTRE, we take a unique look, and we have a unique lens when it comes to talent, right? For us, what we convey is it's not enough to just be talented, right? The question really becomes, how much access do you have to your talent in real time and when it matters most, right? And so, and a big piece of that is your mentality and your mindset. And so the question I have for the group, and we can start with the coaches and then we can go to the players. What stands out to you? What have you seen that stands out mentally when it comes to the best of the best? You know, how are the best of the best, how do they separate themselves? What have you seen, how they separate themselves mentally from the rest? And so we'll start with Coach Jackson, then we'll go to Coach John, and then Ritta, then the rest of the players. If you can unmute, it'd be great.
Okay, I think, Tommy, from a performance standpoint, those guys who are the great players, as you just mentioned, they're different because in high stress pressure situations, they come through consistently. They're able to meet the demands of the situation and handle it. And it looks like it was nothing, where everybody else is going, how did they do that? How did they make that happen? When I think of those players and how they study the game, they study it at a whole different level too. They're able to see things that maybe others can't see. They understand and can unwrap things very quickly, so that when they get in the game and they're in those pressure situations, they are ready to handle those things. And they do it in a lot of different ways. Some guys are studiers, of videotape of the opposing team. Some guys mentally play the game in their mind, just sit there at nighttime and truly play their game and how they want this thing to unfold. They kind of manifest this thing to happen the way they see it. And then there's some guys that just go overboard from a studying, manifesting, training standpoint, and they're able to make it happen. So there's all kind of ways to do it. But the thing that is so apparent to me is there is a mental capacity to do it. And if you don't have that, you can't do it. I truly believe that. I've seen a lot of people in the physical that look the part, that can get the biggest numbers, that can from weightlifting or run fast and do all those things, but they can't put it together because they can't tie it together from a mental standpoint to handle the game, whether it's football IQ, studying, understanding, whatever those things are. So it really makes me understand how important the mental side is to performance.
I couldn't agree with you more, Coach Jackson. I in track and field, as I look to find that unique person, is body language. Well, we call it swag. You can watch them walk in to a room and that room just changes. Doesn't matter how tall they are, how short they are. I can give you an example. It's two actually. One, I coached a French quarter miler named Marjo Perec. She won the 4 and the 200 in 1996. And when I first took her in 93, she had already won the gold medal in 88. And so I looked at her and I said, well, why do you want me to coach you? And she just looked up at me in her broken English and she said, because you make champions. I said, oh, poked my chest out and said, okay, I got it. When I started coaching her, she had two sides to her. Because she was like 5'11". So females, a lot of times when they're tall, they bend over. And so I watched her and I kept trying to like find all kind of ways. Now, mind you, that was some of my best coaching because I didn't speak French and she didn't speak English. So I had to do all kinds of things to make her smile and everything and so forth. And of course, none of it worked, except when I watched her go to the line and my heart was pounding. I'm like, okay, I hope she's got this. And I watched her take her top off, her sweats, roll them up. And she turned into this meek to this, her shoulders went back. Her aura just got large. She ran, she won, and then she morphed back down into her normal competition side. And I'm like, okay. The other one was Maurice Green. Maurice Green didn't make the Olympic team in '96, and he drove out here, rags to riches, really. I mean, he drove to LA from Kansas. The creditors were chasing him. They were on him on his cars and so forth. And he came out here and he came to practice, and I was on vacation. He said, I want you to train me. And I'm like, okay, I have two questions to ask you. I said, how good do you want to be? He said, well, I want to, when they say my name, they know that track and field is resting on my shoulders. I'm like, I said, okay, if I throw everything at you, Will you get up? What will you say? He said, I'll get up and I say, is that all you got? I said, we got practice tomorrow. So that internal confidence from him was something that, and in practice, he wasn't a practice person. You thought the other guys were whipping him up, but he would go home, and I have some mirror exercises that he had to do. And he didn't tell me, but I watched him do something. I said, you been doing those mirror exercises? He said, yeah, I do them every day. I'm like, He would get on the film, and he would come back to me and say, you know, I know the such and such did this. He said, okay, I'm gonna get him. And I'm like, and he would do it, he would deliver because he would study. And then he would be mindful because I would make them recall every race that they ran. As soon as they ran, they come in the back. And I said, okay, what happened at about 30 meters? I said, I got in a hurry. I said, what happened over here? I couldn't keep, because I got in a hurry earlier, I couldn't keep it going down there. So I had to like find some other stuff in my rhythm so I could finish the race with some kind of where I could finish so that the guy didn't beat me. And like, so we developed a relationship like that because when you're running down the track, we don't have no yard markers or anything. So you are training yourself from an intuitive side. You have to know basically how many steps where you are at 60 meters and what it feels like at 80 meters and what it feels like at all aspects of every event. But that becomes because you are mindful. You do mindful training. And in order to do mindful training, you have to be mentally healthy, and you have to protect that. You can't allow people to come in and the naysayers. You have to have a sense of self and purpose, and to allow them to, you know, I didn't like the way you ran. They said, okay, watch the next time I run. And you almost to the point where you call that, oh, they're arrogant. No, it's just that's my shield in order for me to perform.
Have the mindset.
And not have to worry about so much criticism.
You know, and that kind of mindset, just the uniqueness of, you know, the athletes you guys talk about, I think is amazing. And I'm going to call an audible for sake of time, because I know we have some Q&As coming in, and we want to make sure we get to those too. But I'm going to put this one just to Calvin. You know, Calvin, you know, from a mental standpoint, you know, what do you see, yourself included in that, you know, mentally, what separates the best from the best?
I think the coaches alluded to it. I think a lot of it has to do with visualization. One, having spirit, you know, giving you the inkling to, giving you the drive, you know, that drives the mind, and then the mind drives your body, you know, to do the acts that you plan on, that you visualize, that you meditate on. Those things are necessary pieces. I feel like, you know, being able to see yourself doing these things, being in a position of success, those are necessary for us to be able to have success, and for that success to be manifested. You got to be able to visualize. You got to be able to meditate. You got to be able to think about the good things you want to do, so that when you have just, you know, just the random speed bump in the day, you know, it doesn't knock you off your goal. It doesn't knock you off where you're going, because you're focused on what you got to do. You know, just for like example, you going to work and you know what you got to do. You meditated that morning. Okay, today I have to do such and such. Okay, on the way to work, I get cut off. Somebody, you know, they flip me off and all this, you know. Okay, that doesn't bother me because I'm focused on my goal at hand, you know. So visualization, you know, you got to be able to spend some time and meditate and think on the good things that you want to do. And I think Coach Smith alluded to this a little bit earlier, like thinking on the good things you want to do and not thinking on maybe it might be your opponent at hand. You know, you got to focus on what you got to do. You know, you can't waste energy thinking about those things that you can't control. So, yeah.
Awesome. One of the biggest areas in sports and now becoming a massive business is the area of esports. And Ritta, you have a unique perspective in this space, along with everything else that you do. But for some of the parents in the audience, can you provide context to how quickly the transition can take place for a gamer going from an amateur to a professional, and all of a sudden being in front of a global audience in really a short time frame, and many times without a coach or group around you to provide mental support?
Esports is very interesting, considering with regular sports, you know your kid is training for this sport. Like, I played basketball for 11 years. I was training for that, and then ended up going to volleyball and then training for that and becoming a college volleyball player. Parents knew I was going to be an athlete. It was obvious. With esports, you're watching your kid play these video games, and half the time you don't even realize they're playing competitively. You just know they're on the PS4, their PC, any sort of thing like that, and you just know they're playing these games. And then literally overnight, they can become a professional. A coach, a team could just contact them through their DMs and say, hey, we want you to play for our team. And suddenly your kid is being flown out to LA or some other country to live with this team of other gamers. And suddenly they're in these huge tournaments, basically playing video games for millions and millions of dollars. And it's really difficult on a mental standpoint, because you're suddenly thrown into the limelight of the whole internet. And you might think esports is really small, but it's gigantic. For example, Call of Duty or League of Legends, games like those, every year they have world championships, and it's legitimately filling up stadiums of people, full stadiums of people. It's like the Super Bowl, basically. And it's very hard on the players because, as you know, the internet is a very harsh place. People are faceless entities throwing whatever words at you. It's why social media can be dangerous. People can just say whatever they want and not have it come back to them because you don't know who they are. And it's the same with gaming. People are constantly hurling just insults at you, insults at your family, just to like get in your head. And it's hard going from someone who's playing just casually for fun as a stress reliever to having it become your job. And just like normal sports, it's a completely different thing when you're going from playing competitively as a kid to playing college or pro. It can just have a huge toll on your mental health because you're dealing with fans at this point, and it's stressful. And I feel like going into it, you have to have some sort of way to pull back and like come back into yourself and not have your head mentally in the game all the time. Because even though that game might have been your stress reliever beforehand, it's become your job and it's become what you're in the spotlight for now. So you have to find some other thing, whether it's meditation, working out, watching Netflix, any sort of thing that brings you out of that competitive mindset for a little bit, so that you're not thinking about the pressure of performing and basically sitting in front of a computer all day and battling other people across the world for money and all of that stuff. I just think that you need to have something other than that game that used to be a stress reliever to take you out of it.
Thank you.
Awesome. And it's going to continue to grow, you know, and I think it's important for us to start thinking about what we refer to as, you know, cognitive performance sports, you know, in this context of the mental demands that come along with it. And so this question is really for Julius and Spencer, and then Laura, let's take a question from the audience after this. And so, you know, NESTRE has developed, to Calvin's point, you know, our, you know, really unique and differentiator from a mental training perspective of our NESTRE mental framing training, right? And how we see mental framing or mental strength training as being so important on the front end. The two of you have gone through our mental framing training, and in that experience, Could you talk a little bit about just your experience with mental framing training and how, as Calvin was speaking to, how it can add value to someone mentally, whether it's in sports or business? And we can start with Julius.
Tommy, yeah, I'm not mute. Okay, bet. I think framing is probably one of the most valuable psychological skills that anyone can use. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're one of my patients and you're trying to frame the experience of the interaction that you had with your parent, or whether you're a professional athlete and you're trying to frame the experience that happened in last week's game. I think what framing really allows the brain to do is to define the experience, right? The brain is constantly analyzing, predicting, trying to make sense of all these variables in our outside world. And once you provide and just think about it visually, like once you provide a frame, it's just like a photo, that becomes what is. And when you're able to use framing to help people in high performance situations, you're going to decrease a lot of the things that trip people up. Negative emotional experiences, anxiety around having a brain that won't stop running. So I think framing is something that I use personally all the time. I'll help clients and patients create the proper frames so that, like you mentioned earlier, how are they going to have access to their potential? They can't do it if the system that governs their body won't stop running in wrong directions. A frame is going to help you align somebody with how well they just did at reaching their goals, and it touches back into that mindfulness piece as well. So I think the framing is essential for especially high performance with everyone in general.
Absolutely. And just to piggyback off of what Julius said, I think it's also what tools you have to build that framing. Obviously, when we're talking about framing, we think of the most positive image that comes out of a situation, but we have to teach ourselves and the people that we help how to bring out the most positive image and what tools to have for that. So, sometimes in sports, when you've lost a couple games or you don't think you're playing to your ability, it's very easy for you to bring that pessimistic side to you into that framing, but you have to continuously remind yourself that that's not the end all be all. And just allowing yourself to have that positivity be the framing of what you're trying to see. For me, when it comes to any situation that I'm presenting, I'm constantly looking at what's the positive that can come out of that situation. And for me, again, once I figure out what that framing is, that's my period, and it's time to turn the page.
That's awesome. And we're excited about the work we're able to do with framing. To your guys' point, we know the impact that it can have on individuals, sports, business, personal life, well-being, to be able to help move things forward. And so I'm going to go one more place, and then Laura, I promise you I'm going to turn it over to you. But I really wanted to touch on this with Coach Jackson. There was a recent Sports Illustrated feature that was done on you and during your time when you were at Cleveland, and really kind of shed light on the human side of being an NFL coach, being in that world. And you were pretty transparent and vulnerable about some of the things that you've gone through, the losses that had accumulated on you, things that, losses you've never experienced before in your lifetime, personally or professionally. You lost family members, you lost games, and then ultimately you lost, being one of 32 head coaches, in the NFL in a small window of time. Can you share some insights on that experience for you, what you learned about yourself, but also just the mental impact that it has? Well, oftentimes we don't think about coaches or leaders, we think they're the ones that are always leading, but can you give some insight into what that experience was and some insights from what came from that? There you go.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Tommy, thanks for the opportunity to discuss that a little bit. That was a tough time. And when you lose family members, I lost a brother, 2 weeks later, a mother. Prior to that was 1 in 32 as a NFL head coach. You have people saying all these crazy things that they don't know anything about. And you try to stay away from that. And then as the season go on, you end up losing your job. So there was a lot of losses and they came really fast. And as they happened, from a mental standpoint, I can be very honest. I know I went through depression. I remember going into my home, going downstairs in the basement, closing the door, and not wanting to talk to anybody, including you. You were the person that kept calling and kept pushing and kept trying to get me to have conversations. I hung up on Tommy a couple of times, and he would continue to keep pushing. And so I thank him for that. But it was very hard. It was a dark place. I was in a place where I'd never been before. I'd never been fired during the season. I've never experienced the losses from family that fast, that quickly. Never got through it, never got over it. So here it is, and I'm trying to manage all of this at one time. So for about 3 or 4 days, I kind of stayed in the basement. Didn't want to talk to anybody, didn't want to see anybody, didn't want to do anything. And what happened was, honestly, between Tommy, my faith in Jesus Christ, my family, you start to unpack a lot of this, but you still understand that the days don't seem the same. Your routine is different. Your mental thought process is different. Where did you go wrong? What do you need to do? What does this mean? I mean, you start going all over the place. And if you don't have the mental capacity or the resources or someone that can help you walk through what these things are, I don't think people can truly get through it. I really don't. I now understand why people turn to other things, why they all of a sudden give in to life's challenges and look for other things to lessen the burden and the hurt. And I'll share this. I got an opportunity to coach in the NFLPA game. And that was the first time I had been back on the field coaching since losing the job. That was difficult. I had to walk through that even with Tommy in that situation. And because all of a sudden, what I remember the last time I had done this, I lost. I lost and I was a loser, didn't know what I was doing. And so all those things start to impact you. And if you don't have the right people and the right team to walk you through it, it can be very detrimental to your mental health. And I experienced every decline you can think of. Sleep, you just name it. I mean, loss of sleep, loss of appetite, not wanting to deal with people. And I was able to get back up because of my faith, Dr. Shavers, Marvin Lewis. And I ended up back in Cincinnati and got right back to it again, assisting and helping him. But it was very dark. And I truly believe that people need to understand that there are more people that go through things that people see on this pedestal than most. You know, I think people don't think these people are affected by those things. Well, they are, and sometimes at a higher level and at a higher cost.
I appreciate you taking the time to share that too. And you know, obviously we've grown a lot, you know, personally through that experience. The part I'll add for the audience is I think, you know, often when we go through mental challenges and mental load, the tendency could be to do the opposite of what we actually need to do, right? And I know, as you mentioned, you didn't want to talk, and I'm like, I tell you, we're going to talk, you know, you know, but you appreciated it. I mean, that was a part of the going through the experience. And so if you have someone that is going through some challenges, you know, and they say they need space, respect that, but understand that they still need companionship. Find a way to still be there to help walk them through that journey. And so really appreciate, you know, you sharing those insights. And so, Laura, I'll turn it over to you. I think we got some great questions from the audience for the panelists as we begin to kind of bring this thing home.
We do. We have some great questions from the audience. So I just want to thank everyone who sent in a question. For the sake of time, though, I am going to direct the questions to one panelist, and if we can just keep it short and sweet to get through as many questions as possible, that would be ideal. But this one is for Julius. It's around men's mental health. It asks, how do we raise awareness for men to be open to their emotions and mental health when society has stigmatized mindset to men showing any signs of weakness?
I'm not sure who asked that question, but that is, I think that's one of the greatest questions of our time. And I think that's an area that I'm very passionate about is men's mental health and helping men be comfortable with being vulnerable. In any mental health situation, the thing that's difficult is no one can get inside there. And it's only what you share with people about your experience that can allow people to help. And I think it starts with conversations like these, questions like that, and really some of the people with the most status, the men with the most status in our society, admitting to having emotional struggles. I've had emotional struggles. Transitioning from being an NFL player is difficult, and being willing to seek help in those areas, whether that's picking up a book or calling a therapist or whatever it may be. So I just continue to encourage everyone to go ahead and free men up a little bit and allow them to not just have to be warriors and soldiers all the time, but to be human.
Yeah, I love that answer. And I think it's just great that we're having those conversations now, because even my own father, who grew up in Cuba, he mental health was not a conversation they ever had. It was kind of just toughen it up. But this one is going to be for Calvin, and it asks, do you find that others are resistant to adopting meditation / mindfulness due to the cultural stigma surrounding the practice?
Yes, there's I guess that's two parts, I guess, to that. One, people confuse. I can't say. When I first learned the meditation, you think of it as is this a spiritual practice? No, it's just a practice. It's literally it's as if you go practice a footwork drill. You could practice meditation. And then kind of to piggyback off of what Julius was saying there, it can be viewed as weakness, but you got to frame it in such a way that you're building up building your emotional intelligence here, and that's how you got to frame it. And that's how it was framed to me to help me understand it. We're building up we as athletes are built as warriors. We're built to ignore, the pain, the emotional side of things, it's just brute force, and getting after it. But until you got to build that emotional intelligence to help yourself become a more well-rounded, that best version of yourself, as everybody alludes to.
Great. This one is for Ritta. It asks, as a model and social figure, how do you manage the pressure of social media and put your mental health first?
Well, honestly, people think that social media figures have it all figured out, have the equation to not caring about the pressures of social media, and that's not true. While you might be able to ignore what people are saying, the pressure of selling this fantasy of looking like perfection on social media, it wears on you after a while if you're not constantly thinking about it. Personally, the best thing you can do is take breaks from it, and realize that it is simply social media and everybody there is human. It's the best thing you can do. I know a lot of people feel pressured by how perfect everyone else's lives look on there. And it's, as I said earlier in the panel, everyone's showing their best side. Nobody is really trying to show their worst moments. Nobody's going to show when they're down. Nobody's going to show when they're depressed. They're going to show when they're at their happiest, when they're on vacation, when they're doing something amazing, having achievements. And you just have to realize that you're seeing the best side of everybody. And I feel like as long as you remind yourself that everybody on there is human, everybody is just trying to show the best side of themselves, is how you'll not tire yourself out by being on social media and not letting that get to your head.
Great. This next question is going to be for Coach Jackson. It asks, how you mentioned that there are exceptional athletes are different. It asks how they have the mindset and confidence. Can people work to get closer to that level? If so, can you describe a few of the activities that we can do to become better?
I think you can. I think meditation and manifesting or a couple of things that one can do to help in that area. And also, I mean, it's never any the old adage of hard work. You know, you got to work extremely hard at what you want and what you want to accomplish. But boy, being able to mentally be able to see it, believe it, is a huge piece of that as well.
Great. This next question talks about someone who's 24 years old and they don't have much experience to prove to potential clients that they're capable of performing a job at the level of someone who has been in the job for 20 more years. This can take a toll on me mentally. How did the panel cope with the mental aspect of ambiguity? Wow, I can't say that. Cut from a team, being told no, and come back stronger from being pushed down. So this is just a.
I'll jump on that one. Because that was a great question. I'm gonna start off by saying, you know, I was once told by a professor, and really it depends on how you're wired to and how you frame things. Some people feed off of ambiguity. Some people try to minimize and eliminate ambiguity. But if you can frame it in the opportunity that ambiguity is your friend, and in the sense that if experience was a prerequisite for success, there would never be success, right? And being able to understand that ambiguity gives you an opportunity to create. And so never be afraid of the opportunity to do that, but also understand too that there is a process, and it starts with your confidence and your internal belief, how confident you are in who you are. And it may take some time for someone to recognize that along the way. But if they don't recognize your internal confidence, it's going to be very difficult for them to give you an opportunity to show the things that you may be able to do. And so that speaks a little bit to what John said a little earlier, Calvin, Coach Jackson, and even Julius. That mindset, that internal belief is really, really important, and leverage ambiguity as your friend. It's an opportunity to create, learn, recreate, and get better.
Great. I'm going to direct this next question to Spencer. It says, mental health is the key issue for our society for the next few years. Today, with 4 out of 10 people in the United States having diagnosable anxiety, what methodologies are you using to prepare yourself, your colleagues, and your clients to navigate the stresses in their professional and personal lives?
I mean, for me specifically, it's communication. Just being open and honest about my own abilities, and just allowing myself to be sort of a receiver for other people. If you're my friend, if you're my colleague, like, you know that you can come and talk to me no matter what the issue is, and I will receive it. And I just think it's having that avenue that can allow for just better healing across the board. So open communication at the end of the day.
I'm going to direct this next question to John. It asks, what kind of techniques have you used to turn off from all the stress you face once you get home?
I had a rule. When I leave the playing field, when I shut that door, I have to empty the trash, wash the dishes, do the chores around the house. And that's how I was raised. My dad looked at me, he said, dishes are dirty. You gotta wash them. I learned to have certain things, outlets, that kept me from so-called getting big head. It made you more human. When I was coming up as a kid, we cleaned the church. We had to do the bulletins, so it was a stencil. So we had to do the bulletins. We set up the chairs. I was an usher. My dad was a deacon. My brother sung in the choir. We all had things where we had to work on something bigger than us. And you keep it in perspective. And another thing, when you wake up in the morning, and even now, because I've always been in the performance business, you're only as good as the last practice that you had. I wake up in the morning, I say, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's not real fancy or nothing, but it's meditation, which is nothing but a form of prayer. We human beings been doing that all along. We do that, when I have prayer every Monday. I call it words of wisdom. You do that in the locker room. They've taken it out of the school and the education. So therefore, I reinforce it more at home. But the prayer strengthens you so you can be a co-creator for your own destiny. And you don't have to have this mega corporation trying to make you who you are and what you do. You got to keep them separate. And when you do that, you can go through the filigree of life challenges. You can walk in the middle of the room and someone was in there. If you know who you are and you centered and you standing there and those clothes look good on you, and when you speak, you're speaking from a bravado that just overwhelms everybody, but it's a kindness, not an arrogant. And they'll look at it and say, you know what? They'll come stand next to you. The way you grab your hors d'oeuvres, the way you stay, the silence speaks volume. And so it's you have to work on. Who you are is more important than anything that you do, because who you are validates, makes what you do better.
If I can touch on that as well, if we have enough time. One thing that helped me sort of regiment my life, even when playing, was when I was a football player, I was a football player at the facility. But then once I left the facility, I was a husband, and just a human being, essentially. So, usually when days ended at, 4 or 5, 6 p.m., I would do all my studying at the facility and not bring my iPad home, because I wanted to interact with my wife at the time. I wanted to watch a random TV show that I've been wanting to watch, just to have that sense of normalcy and not have to have my iPad over dinner or while I'm in bed or while, splitting my attention. Even now, since we're in COVID and a lot of work is happening at home, the room that I am right now in my office, I don't come into this room unless I'm here to work. I don't treat this room as a leisure place to go. When I'm sitting at this desk, it's time to work, as well as like a workout area that I have in my home. I only go there with the intention of working out. So just having, clear lines in your life of, if you're in a place, you're 100% committed to that place. But then once you move on from that spot, commit to that next area. So just regimenting your space.
Yeah, completely agree with that. I'm actually going to turn it over to Kyle now, who's going to close us out.
I'm going to ask, thank you, Laura, and thank you for all the great questions from the audience, and certainly thank you for the responses from our panel. I do want to ask a question that speaks truly to me and my experience. And at NESTRE, we call this process the cliff. And the depression that I experienced once my playing days at UCF were over, and this instant loss of identity, and really trying to figure out who I was as I transitioned into this next place in life. And had I had the tools that Dr. Shavers had given me now to manage that, then it would have been a much easier transition. But I want to ask you, Julius, what are the real mental health challenges that athletes deal with, or somebody in the business world going to a new job or a new position as they lose that identity and transition to the next phase of life?
Appreciate that, Kyle. I think this is something that Dr. Shavers and I have spoke on at length, and it takes a certain understanding of how our brain works. But one thing that I would hope that everybody can understand is that the brain desires what it wants through time. So for an athlete, throughout our lives, we told our brain this is important. Then we do it, and our brain gives us a check, and it says that feels good. By the time you become great at something, done some 20 years, your brain is always directing you towards that. That's that focus, that's that attention that we're talking about. And then one day it's gone. It's like taking everything that your brain finds meaningful, or not everything, but a lot of the things it finds most meaningful, most motivating, and it takes it out of your reach. And now you're struggling to find new places to get that same feeling. Like where do you get that same feeling when you're no longer doing that thing that you love? And I'm sure that you experienced that when you were done. It's okay, what now? How many hours a day did you have to spend to be great? And it's useless. Nobody cares how well you throw an out route. Nobody cares how well I run a post now. But it's a lot about what we've talked, like I think Spence talked about this. How are you finding these things that you do outside of that? And anytime you've trained yourself that this is the most important thing and you don't have it, you grieve. And that's what Coach Jackson talked about, is that feeling of, wow, this is what matters to me, and this is what's important, and it's not here anymore. And if I can't ever access it again, I have to build new meaning. And it's not easy to build new meaning. It's an existential problem, and you can pick up book after book about the difficulties in doing that. So life is about meaning and finding things that you do that are important to you. And then when those are gone, whether that's a loved one or a career, what do you do next? And building new meaning. So I think that that's something that all mental health therapists, we got to do. We got to help people, all coaches, all people that love someone else. How do we help people that we care about build new meaning when the things that are important to them are gone?
Thank you, Julius. I appreciate that that question. We have about 5 minutes left, so would love to just circle up and let everybody on the panel give us some of your final thoughts. 30 seconds about what you've taken from this and what you'd like to leave our audience with today before we sign off. And I'll go ahead and start with Ritta, and then we'll move over to Hue right after that.
I think the biggest thing to take from this is that everyone in every walks of life has some sort of mental stressor in their life, and everybody goes through some sort of mental highs and mental lows. It doesn't matter if you're an athlete, an entertainer, you work in an office, you work on a stage, it doesn't matter. You're gonna have ups and downs, and the way you cope with that is gonna be different from every person. And you just have to remember that everybody is going through something at some point in time, and you can't just assume that somebody's just constantly on the up, on the rise. Everybody's going through something, and we all have our ways of dealing with it, and it's best to find your way personally of doing things.
I think the biggest thing that I could leave and give is to make sure you invest in you. I think it's so important. You invest so much in working and doing so many things for so many different people. Don't forget about you. You have to invest in your well-being, physically, mentally, emotionally, every which way you can, so that you can be the best version of you and have the best life that you, and have the type of life, I should say, that you want to have.
Thank you, Hugh. I'll go ahead and yeah, go ahead, Spencer.
Oh, well, I was going to leave people with the idea of athletes have somewhat been lied to in terms of having traditional skills that translate off the field. Just in my readings and understanding it more, those are actually traits. So the fact that athletes are sort of built to lock in longer than other people, or are able to study longer and just be more engaged, to me, that's a trait. When I left football and transitioned into the production space, tackling somebody did nothing for me at that point. But locking into understanding this world of production, understanding the structure of writing, knowing that I can read for hours, or I can read 10 scripts a day or whatnot. Those are traits that I learned from football, learned from team sports. So just like that with mental health, if it's something that you're adamant about, lock into it. Like, take the traits from sports and treat it just like how you were in practicing. Like, we can practice these things and get better at these things, but fundamentally, to me, it's a trait that we're able to do these things at a high level instead of a skill set.
Thank you, Spencer. John, any last thoughts from you?
Yeah, I actually this is wonderful for me because, Calvin, I never met you. I never met you, Hue, or Julius, but I've always watched you guys, and it's real nice. Spence, I know Spence. And Rita, I don't know you, but I've been in the movie industry and so forth, so I understand a little bit about them doors getting closed in your face. But one of the things that I always do, there's two things. One, when I come home, and the way I get out of depression or some kind of setback, I say, you know what? There's somebody that had a little worse day than you did. And then the other question I say, and this is my feel-good moment, if everything was going right, what would that feel like? And I focus in on that. Then I come home, and what I mean come home, I'm home in the house, but I come home spiritually and fundamentally, so I can now contribute to my loved ones around the house. And Calvin, I want to say one thing. I watched you do it, Jim Brown. You just walked away from the game. Power to you, baby.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Yes, sir.
Calvin, we'll turn it over to you in Jim Brown-esque fashion.
I guess everybody spoke a little bit today to just being the best version of themselves. You know, it's a strive for perfection, though we're never perfect. You know, like I said earlier, just trying to stack those good days on top of each other. How do you do that? Through the meditation piece we talked about, creating that plan. And that drives us to do the great things that we do in our lives. But you got to be able to compartmentalize these things, you know, like Spencer said earlier, you know, you want to handle your work at work so that you can go home and be 100% in, be all in, be locked in to that task at home. Or if you got to go, you know, go to the office, you locked in at the office, you got to be able to compartmentalize and take those principles of, you know, of meditation and planning out what your tasks so you have a you know, a chart to work off of, something to work off of, and something to drive you. So I just wish, you know, this is awesome. One, seeing my colleagues, one, seeing coaches, Tommy, always seeing you, getting to meet everybody else. I'm always over here taking notes, and this was a great learning experience for me, and I hope I was able to contribute and give you guys something to.
Yeah, I think that this has been a pleasure to share this forum with these panelists. I mean, they gave you all the keys you need to be really successful. And the only thing that I think can be added is don't undervalue support. I mean, when you really think about how much support it's going to take to become great at anything, it's easy for you to overlook how many people really just chipped in. How many people helped you with that injury? How many people came in and gave you some coaching? So and don't be embarrassed about looking for support, whether that's professionally, mentally, emotionally, physically. That is one of the 5 keys I have for success. So find those people that can support you.
That's awesome.
I'm sorry, real quick to cut you off, Tommy. And it just actually like popped up in my mind, but something that Kenny Stills, receiver for the Houston Texans, is doing right now is he's challenging people to go beyond "I'm good" when asking people how they're doing, even for himself. So, you know, later on today, when you guys are talking to friends or family and they just give you that casual "I'm good," challenge them to go a step further in addressing their feelings. It could lead to a great conversation. I've done it myself for the past couple of days with my friends and my family. But yeah, just go one step further than "I'm good" in your assessment of yourself and your friends.
I think that's awesome. And then be ready for the ride, because it is awesome when someone is consciously aware and answering that question. Now we're actually living, right? You know, and I think that's great insight. I want to leave the audience with this, and this is really a core passion with us at NESTRE. We really want the world to understand that, you know, mental and cognitive load is everybody. So, you know, that's not just somebody who's struggling or the elite. That's everybody. That's life. Life creates load. And so we want to encourage people to really focus on your mental and cognitive strength training. That's what we do at NESTRE. And we want to encourage you to find ways to be able to do that. And so I'll turn it over as we wrap up.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got about 1 minute here. I will remind everybody that there will be an email coming from the UCF College of Business. In that link will be an opportunity to pre-register for the download of our NESTRE mental and cognitive strength training app. And again, that will provide a free 90-day subscription when we go live here in 2021. And with that, I want to thank again the College of Business and the alumni chapter for partnering with us to host this incredible panel. And thank you to our amazing panelists for being here today and sharing your stories and insights. It was truly incredible. And just remember, even in this virtual world, the College of Business is all about engagement and connecting our students, faculty, alumni, community, and corporate partners with experts, ideas, and opportunities to help them succeed, like today's specific event. I want to thank the audience for tuning in, many of you staying the entire duration of the panel discussion, which tells me that you were enjoying what you were hearing. And also thank you for submitting those questions, and hopefully we were able to provide the answers that you were looking for. And so with that, I'll leave you with a go Knights and charge on.
All right, guys, we'll have to go on.